It is time for another episode of One Soccer Today, a bit of a mournful edition the day after the Concacaf Nations League semifinals took place at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, and there were two shocking results, one that brought the euphoria and the other that brought the heartbreak. Here to commiserate, to analyze, and to make sense of Canada's defeat to Mexico are Oliver Platt and Alexander Gange Ruzik. Gentlemen, so much to get into. Of course, we've had a bit of time now to process it. We had the One Soccer live stream immediately after the full-time whistle with Jordan Wilson and Gareth Wheeler, but it's time for some fresh takes. And I actually want to start, boys, if I may, not with either of you. I know that's very disrespectful of me, but from Jesse Marsh. This was from Ben Steiner on SI.com. Marsh after the game. It was like a knife in the heart to play well, to really do a lot of good things, but then just fall short of the goal. The disappointment is hard to shake. It's a missed opportunity. But again, I think in so many ways, it's still another step where we're continuing to show our quality, organization, and intelligence. But Alex, he finishes by saying, now it's just a little bit of that savviness that the best teams have. Was it as simple for you as savvy? Is that what Canada was missing, or was there something else that went wrong yesterday?
Yeah, savvy's definitely, maybe one of the areas where Mexico definitely outwitted them, outfoxed them. You saw a bit of that peak Mexico in a CONCACAF game throughout this match. And yeah, that's probably the best way to sum it up. I mean, ultimately, I think for Canada, it boils down to a lot more than that. I mean, this was a very, lot of nuance you can take from this sort of performance, but it definitely feels like Canada left something on the table. They went out in this game, and it was there for them to be won. Instead, it felt like Mexico got the better of them in two key moments. Canada weren't able to capitalize on any of their prime opportunities, and they leave feeling like they could have gotten more out of it, which is probably why it hurts a little more. Like, Mexico's a good team. It can't have been thoroughly outplayed. Okay, that you take that, but the reality is they did leave a little bit on the table.
Ollie, let's pull on that thread, leaving something there. The swagger was abound. It was a team of peacocks that wore red and white. They had their chests puffed. They were confident. At times, it felt like maybe borderline arrogant, because there was this belief that they had accomplished something, or that they were going to cruise through. Certainly after Panama beat the Americans, it was, okay, Mexico is just a stop on the way to our trophy to end this drought. How big of a blown opportunity, missed opportunity is this for you in your eyes?
What I'm disappointed that we're talking about coming out of this game is savviness, to be honest with you, because look, I understand that's part of it in CONCACAF, but this is a group, and there's been some changes in the group and some new players have come in, but all of them have had some kind of big tournament experience by now, I think. Like, some of them have been through World Cup qualifying, a World Cup, a Nations League final in 2023, and the Copa America. Like, it's frustrating for me that the big reason we're talking about Canada not getting what they wanted out of this semi-final is savviness. That I think will be a real disappointment in the group. So I think sometimes these games can be ripe for overreaction. I think there was a bit of that in 2023, and I'm sure there will be some of that, in Jesse Marsh's style of play and so on and so forth coming out of this one. But it was just the manner in which Canada lost the game that I think they'll look back on and feel some regret that they weren't, whether it was mindset, whatever it was, a bit more prepared for what they were going to get in this game.
Alex, so that's the feeling, right? So everyone's kind of understanding what could have been, perhaps what should have been, if the stars aligned and Canada played the way they did. But they played a certain way. Mexico played their football, and ultimately here we are, 2-0. From the performance itself, the X's and O's, where I want to take you next, what did you make of it? What was there to like? What was there to maybe shake your head in frustration at old habits dying hard again?
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out, and maybe we'll get lost in this, at least from a Canadian perspective, Mexico got the game plan bang on. Like, I think so much credit has to go to Javier Aguirre for how he's come in and just turned this team around, how organized, how disciplined, how tactically flexible they are. Like, they went to the US, or they played the US in the fall, pressed them off the park. Now they've played Canada twice, done the complete opposite. Like, they were excellent. I think the worry from a Canadian perspective is they completely took away Jesse Marsh's plan A. There was going to be no pressing. Mexico kept playing long. Like, no mistakes at the back. They sat back. They're like, all right, break us down. There's going to be no free counterattacks, anything of that like. And they fouled a lot. Like, beat us on a set piece. And the reality is Canada were not able to provide enough in all of those areas. They did get some good parts of the pitch they were getting in the final third. It's not like it was a completely empty performance from Canada offensively. Jesse Marsh spoke about that after the game, saying he did want to see a bit more creativity, a bit more of that final action. But at the end of the day, I think Mexico just nullified their plan A, and Canada didn't have enough of a plan B to get anything out of this match.
Just to continue that idea, Alex, because I think you're right. Two things are true here. Mexico were exceptional. Canada weren't dreadful. And yet, the clean sheet hurts, doesn't it? When we sing the praises of Jonathan David for good reason. He is rightfully in that top three, if not the best player in CONCACAF, depending on the day and who you ask. But that combination, the midfield in the center with Kone and Eustaquio, David and Larin, it just didn't really seem as though there was much for them to play off of each other if you look at that central four.
100%. I think that the central four was, just a bit out of sync. If anything, I'd also throw Jonathan Osorio into that mix because, yes, he was played as a winger, but if you're going to play him as a winger, he's kind of another 10. He's another creative outlet. He had 8 touches in 60 minutes. Like, that's just something where if you're going to have a creator on the field, you want to get him involved. You didn't get him enough involved. Jonathan David was not getting in the areas you want Jonathan David. Kone had glimpses, but he'd have a turnover and then maybe he'd have a moment of magic. Yeah. It's just, the balance was very off in the final third. I think the midfield did kind of create a lot of that because that's where it's going to start from, right?
Only the first goal. I almost missed it because I was driving home and just pulling into my driveway, and I'm like, I have at least 90 seconds to make sure the TV is on and a glass of water in my hand. 46 seconds into the game, and it comes from a mistake from a throw-in. It's a head scratcher ultimately, but it's not just bad luck. There are some things about the way Canada positionally started the game that might have seemed off or a little bit overzealous.
I think the mistake was the throw-in. I think this is a product. If you're going to have criticisms of the style of play, if you're going to ask questions about that coming out of this game, and again, I think some of it might be a little bit premature. This is one thing you can point to because I think this game was always going to be a case of Mexico trying to slow the game down as much as possible, Mexico taking as long as possible on restarts, trying to keep the ball out of play, frankly, for as long as they possibly could, and Canada doing the opposite to try and counteract that and compensate for that and taking quick restarts, getting the ball back in play as quickly as they can. And Alistair Johnston on that throw-in deep in his own half by the corner flag takes under 3 seconds to get the ball back into play.
Right.
And they're just not ready. Mexico were more ready than they were. And I think probably anticipating that Canada would be doing that, right? And, you have 3 guys around Jonathan David. He's out-battled very easily. Not really his fault, I think, given the lack of support and the situation he's put in. And then from there, there's a lot of bad fortune in terms of the bounces and the way it eventually falls to Raul Jimenez. But they put themselves in that situation with that quick restart, which is just, again, one of those things where I think you need to be a little bit smarter. And I'm disappointed in this group that they weren't, because I think they should be by this point.
And Alex, the next thing is the goal happens. That happens in sports. It's not just football. Sometimes you get punched in the face earlier than you think you're going to get punched in the face. And that's the reality. You have 89 minutes to go on, mount a comeback, get some goals. That's A-okay. Then, as if there was a fire alarm at SoFi Stadium, you might say, Alex, things got a little bit crazy when VAR decided that there was not enough to overrule a decision from their Honduran referee, Syed Martinez. It's 8 minutes after the goal. Canada, they kind of settle things down. They're almost at the end of that 10-minute mark. And then suddenly, Derek Cornelius gets hacked down in the box by Edson Alvarez. The referee calls a foul against Cornelius and then has absolutely no interest in using video assistant referee to see if maybe he got it wrong. It's obviously ripe and full of controversy. What's your takeaway here? Because VAR, when it works properly, is supposed to be the savior of egregious officiating.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to have this discussion because, might take away from, some of the issues that Canada had on the night, but this one was egregious. This one was, I was puzzled. Derek Cornelius, yes, you can argue maybe he threw himself at the ball. Where is he going with his touch and everything? At the end of the day, he gets to the ball about a second or two before Edson Alvarez takes a clear touch. it's just so reckless from Alvarez. That's the big thing. Like, did Alvarez mean to hit him? No. That's maybe where the ref was probably looking. But he just swipes at him in his own box. I just don't get why you don't look at it. Okay, fine. You don't want to call it on the field. Maybe you're feeling that the players are trying to manipulate you. It's an emotional game. I get it from a referee's perspective. You don't have the best angle of it. But what's the point of having a screen? You go and take a minute to go look at it, at least get the different angles. I was completely puzzled by it because, yeah, that's a big, game-changing moment. If Canada gets that penalty, maybe they score, maybe they settle their nerves. It's a different match. Instead, they kind of start to build up this feeling where, maybe things are against you. It's not going to be one of those days. And that kind of snowballed. All of a sudden, they get a bunch of those yellow cards. And, you can see that anger boiling. So it was a very frustrating decision, especially because it just felt like they kind of waved it away and dismissed it a lot earlier than they should have.
Ollie.
If you can't get that right with VAR, then don't bother having it. Like, we might as well just scrap it. There's no point in having the system and going through this process if you can't see that is at least worthy of sending the referee to the monitor. Like, it's an obvious penalty. It's a stonewall penalty. I want to know what happens. I want to know if the referee was told by the VAR, you need to go and look at this, and said no thanks, because that would be absolutely bonkers if so. Or did the VAR think himself, not a clear and obvious error, don't need to send him over, play on? Like, either one is bad. I think the first one is worse, though, if the referee's just kind of put his finger in his ears and refused to go and look at it. So, look, you can say what you want about Canada's performance in this game. Left a lot to be desired in a lot of areas, a lot of things that they would have wanted to be better. But they should have had a penalty to tie the game very early on. And then that is potentially, we're talking about a completely different match, a completely different situation for Mexico, and maybe a different outcome. It was a huge turning point in the game, and I don't think it's an excuse or like misdirection to say that was a massive break that went against Canada that affected their chances of reaching this Nations League final, and they have a right to be very unhappy about it.
And Alex, one of those things where you can look at it and say, yes, we all agree, or at least everyone with an objective or unbiased, nonpartisan opinion says penalty, mistake. At the end of the day, Canada needs to score 2 goals to draw this match because of what happened later on with Raul Jimenez's brace. We talked a little bit about that central four. You gave me some thoughts on Jonathan Osorio, but just to pick up on that offensive thread a little bit more, when you look at Alphonso Davies, and we know how he is this hybrid of a left back that can join the attack and be very good at it, and then a guy who needs to sit back and defend when the game's not going right. And then the stereotype, or maybe not the stereotype, but the story, I suppose, around Davies, you saw flashes again last night. When the game needs to be broken open or he's frustrated, he tries to do a little bit too much. What is the solve for the offensive woes? Because there was 1 shot on target from 11 attempted in this game from the Canadians, and that's not going to win you a lot of football matches.
Yeah, I think simplicity is the big thing, because I think, on the flip side, you can look at what Ali Ahmed did, and I liked it. Yeah, he maybe lacked some of the final product, but I thought he does the right things where he gets the ball, head down, get it wide. If it's not on wide, just cut inside, make a simple play. There's a bit of a beauty in the simplicity because it creates chances for himself. And I think with Davies, had Davies done a lot of the same things throughout the 90, I think Davies has an assist or two if he gets in the positions Ahmed was getting into. So I think with Davies, and I think the attack as a whole, they just got to, not overthink things as much. Because that's the thing. Watching back some of the clips, some of their best moments, they get into the right areas. That's half the battle. That's sometimes the thing. If they weren't getting into those areas, I'd be more worried. But at the same time, you got to know when to make that pass. You need a bit more movement off the ball. That's another thing I'll be looking a lot at. So I get Davies. Perhaps he looks up, sees a lack of that movement, wants to take it on himself. But I think he should be taking some notes from Ahmed, the simplicity he does. And I think that kind of goes for the attack as a whole.
Yeah. Well, it always seems to fall on Alphonso when things don't go right. And
does.
That's the nature of being the captain and being the best player on the team and in the region. So if you're in the camp, if he needs to be better, he certainly wasn't the only one, because you have 9 other outfield players and a keeper that might have or should have probably saved a penalty. So who I don't want to say who disappointed you, like you're an angry, upset father watching his kids play at their local youth team, but who else needed to be better from that game?
Well, there's a few, but I want to talk about Alfonso a little bit quickly because, like, it's very apparent right now. Like what Alex said is right. When he plays with more simplicity, and takes on less of the burden himself, he plays better. I think we've seen that countless times. But in a game like that, like I think the reason he tries to do more is because not a lot was going on around him. And so I have some sympathy for him in that regard. He's trying to make things happen. He's trying to be a difference maker. That's what people do want from him as the star player of this Canada team to a certain extent. It didn't pan out, and it wasn't his best game. But like to me, that was also a product of. I think the Osorio thing was a mistake. Personally, love Jonathan Osorio, fantastic player, but he's a midfield player playing out wides. They do it for his experience, his discipline off the ball, all of those different things. But Jesse Marsch is trying to build a fast-paced vertical team. And there was a real lack for me of fast-paced vertical players on the pitch beyond Alphonso Davies. Maybe Ali Ahmed. I don't think he's really a complete north-south player as much as he's quick and good 1v1. I understand your options are limited when Schaffelberg's played so little. Buchanan's still a bit of a, what are you going to get at this time? I think you have to gamble on Tajon, though, in that situation and have that type of player on the pitch because Canada was lacking it, I think, for far too long. And I think that led into what you saw from Davies. So other than that, Johnston, rough night, obviously. Did well in the second half not to get sent off. The midfield, I think, as a whole was not at its best. Kone is still a little bit of, I didn't think he was terrible, but you're not getting the same player that you've seen at his best at certain moments in the past year or two. And Jonathan David was taken care of. I thought Lira was very good in midfield, just constantly knew where he was between the lines, did a good job of not completely man-marking him, but making sure he was passing him onto the centre-backs when he was higher. Mexico had a good game plan. They got a lot right.
They did. It's impossible to argue that. We're 17 minutes or so into this program, and I'm not saying that we need to be overtly positive because it's disappointing and it's a defeat, but it's not as though, and I think you guys have both put this well, it wasn't an empty performance. There wasn't absolutely nothing to celebrate in this. So if there's a viewer of this program, Ollie, who's looking for a silver lining or a bright spot, what direction might you point them in?
It's still a good team, guys. Like, it's one match. They conceded a goal in the first minute. It's a major disappointment, and I think everyone should be disappointed because we've seen that this team can go toe-to-toe with the US, with Mexico, with anyone in this region, and we've seen that they're on that level now. But until they win a trophy, and now, maybe we can see it at the Gold Cup this summer. If not, they're going to have to wait a little bit in all likelihoods. There's going to be a big gap on their resume. So people should be disappointed with that. They should see this as a missed opportunity. There's no questioning that. But I hesitate to think that, this is some damning indictment of the way Jesse Marsch wants to play or this team as a whole. It's a semi-final. Things went against them. They didn't recover in the way that you would have liked to have seen, didn't play the game that you would have liked. But they will bounce back. And this team, I still think, has a lot of positive things in front of them.
Alex, for you, more positives?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to look at it from an individual perspective, I mean, I gave Ali Ahmed a lot of praise. I see him a lot more than most, maybe out here on the West Coast. So, I've been used to seeing these sorts of just good, positive performances, good things he's done. And I think Jesse Marsch really has someone he can rely upon there, which is, it's going to be good going forward for Ahmed. I think another one that's, maybe going to get lost because it's a 2-0 game, just Moise Bombito, especially because he kind of got, of the yellows, the back four got, his was probably the most unlucky. Like, yeah, he stepped on Raul Jimenez, but setting that as the bar for a yellow felt a bit surprising. But as he's done many times, he gets an early yellow. It's no problem. And he just puts out so many fires. And what I love about it is it makes such a huge difference for Derek Cornelius, because Derek Cornelius almost ends up suffering a bit, you can almost say, because he's the one making these wild lunges. He's the guy who looks wildly out of position. He can do it because he knows Moise Bombito is there. It's almost like Cornelius is the sacrifice guy. He'll make himself look bad if it pushes the guy into the path of Bombito, because Bombito is just always going to put out that fire. So I think Bombito just is so huge to have defensively for Canada because they can just play so much more aggressive. And I think you don't notice it in a game like this where they lose. Whereas had they won this, I think Bombito would have been getting a lot of praise.
There's just something about that left-sided centre-back position right now that you got to anticipate your head is going to be in a bandage by the end of the night if you're playing that role for Canada. I'm not sure what it is.
Scrum caps for all moving forward for this team. There's another theme here, and it's a double-edged theme with the goal that Mexico scored to really put this game to bed. Set piece goal. You can nitpick about the wall, you can nitpick about the positioning of Dane St. Clair, but the fact is Mexico scored a set piece. Canada had 7 corners in this match. We will now have an infamous meme. I'm disappointed that Canada did not come back and win for the Jesse Marsh holding up the X to call the set play. They go short with it. They're clearly experimenting and trying to find a system that sticks. But from those 7 corners, absolutely nothing to show for it. And I know it's not a direct like-for-like link, Alex, but even the crossing in the match from Canada tonight didn't necessarily inspire a great deal of confidence. Only 16% of the 19 they attempted came off. And from that idea of service, there are questions. You have Ali Ahmed and you have Alphonso Davies taking the corners and a lot of the dead balls. Stefan Eustaquio seems like a guy who should probably be taking more than he is. But at the end of the day, aside from some design pieces from the training ground, what needs to change here? Because Canada lost that battle, the set piece battle, and is one of the reasons why they lost this game.
Yeah, I think service is a big issue and will be naturally focused at. Alphonso Davies is always going to get a lot of criticism for it, some of it fair, some of it unfair. The reality is the service just hasn't been good for a while. People be quick to forget Stefan Eustaquio. There's a game last fall where his service was woeful. It seems like whoever's taken that burden, it's not been great. For me, the one thing that I am continuing to look at, the movement is just not good enough. Like, I think that's all. Like, there were a few times where Ali Ahmed whipped in a ball. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's something there. And there's just a Mexican player towering over a Canadian guy, kind of flat-footed, kind of looking up like, whoa, what happened? Like, what I don't like is if the set pieces aren't working, take a page out of Arsenal's book. What do they do on every corner? You go in, you whip in an in-swinger in the near post. All your guys just run at it. It flicks off someone's, back, butt, head, and just goes towards the goal. I think Canada at this point, like, why not try that? Like, why not just, keep it simple? I just really don't like the movement. Like, how many times have they had a guy flash across the near post and flick it onto the back post? How many times have they had guys starting a little deeper at the back post and meeting one of those curling outswing? If you're going to do outswingers, you need that like stereotypical guy jumping and meeting it. Like, I think the movement kind of gets lost and it's very poor. And I think that's something I'd like to see them adjust. Just go back to basics if you need to.
All I heard there was start Promise David and get a 6'5" frame in the box. Ollie, set pieces, how do we fix them?
Surprised we didn't see him, honestly.
We're getting there.
I mean, 6'5", he's in top form, scoring, creating goals late in a game. I'm surprised we didn't see Promise David in this game. That was another thing that was a little bit unusual to me. But look, the set pieces, concur with a lot of what Alex said. I do think the delivery is a big problem. I think if you're going to, do the Arsenal thing and put them right in the danger area consistently, like, it takes exceptional delivery to do that. It's got to be flat. It's got to be fast. I don't think they have a corner taker who can do that. Ahmed, I thought, was okay, but they don't really have, a ton of whip on them. They're a bit more floated. So that's a big issue when you've got a team that's constantly trying to stop the game and you are getting some set piece opportunities to not be able to capitalize in that way. I also thought the Jimenez free kick, the wall was way too far back. Like, I didn't know why Canada didn't protest that more. It looked like it was like 14, 15 yards. Johnston was complaining a little bit, but that to me played a big part in that goal because he just easily put it around the wall. And should Dane St. Clair do better? Yeah, probably. But that again was just one of those things where you're like, it's not their night. Everything's going against them.
Well, the hope that Sunday is more their night. It's not the game that Canada and the U.S. wanted to be playing in, but they'll be playing each other, and we wanted to see that at the very least. The third place match will go first on Sunday at SoFi Stadium. We'll use the last 5 minutes of the program to kind of look ahead to that and get the energy back up, because this is still not a nothing game. This is still Canada and the USA. You want the trophy. At least it shouldn't be a nothing game. Whether you think each team will treat it as such is a different story. And maybe we'll use Ollie Promise David as an example to set up this game, because Jesse Marsch knows he can't win or lose anything other than pride, and to back up some of the words he's been saying. And I think a lot of people would agree, rightfully so, given the context of the world right now. But he kind of has a blank slate to experiment. Daniel Jebison gets his first cap late in the game. Whether it was the right move or not, that's for the past now. Let's look ahead. What would you do if you were Coach Marsch, setting up against the Americans, wanting to beat the Americans on their home soil, as they're kind of reeling a little bit right now too?
To be honest, I know it's tricky with obviously everything that's going on in the anticipation of a potential Canada-USA game at this tournament, but I would not care about the result, to be honest with you, if I was Jesse Marsch. I think one of the things that was made very apparent in last night's game and this week in the build-up is that you may have thought that you've built out more depth than Canada has had previously. You still don't have enough, and we've still got to build more. And I would want to start right now looking at players who can help us build that out. So, I'm sure some of the key guys will still play, but, I still look at that central midfield area. Like, if Kone's form as a young player making his way in Europe is going to continue to be pretty unpredictable, all it takes is what happened, which is Matthew Chouanier getting injured and, presumably not really being fully ready for this tournament. And you don't have much other choice, right? So can we see Nico Seeger come in and really start to develop his chances of making an impact with Canada? And you could go through a few different positions, I think, where there's still a need for more depth and more options and just being more ready for injury and form situations.
Alex.
Yeah, I just would like to see some switches, some shake things up. I think Jesse Marsch went for a pretty safe lineup. And you know what? I get it. It's a semifinal, a big game. You haven't played in 4 months. Like, I get the rationale behind going for a safer lineup. Now you kind of have nothing to lose, right? There's nothing on the line. You lost the game that really mattered. Experiment. I think the big thing for me is the attack. The reality is they've scored 12 goals in 14 games under Marsch, and 3 of those were against Suriname. In too many of these games, you've been left wanting a little more from a team that has goals in them. Like, this is a team with Jonathan David, Promise David, Taniolo Oluwaseyi. They left Jason Russell-Rowe at home. There's, guys who can score goals. Experiment with the front line. Let's at least
it's time.
We've seen a rare Taniolo Oluwaseyi start in like the 3rd place game against Uruguay. Go back to that if you want to see a bit more of it. You brought Promise David in, give him a proper run, 60, 70 minutes, see if what he can do in Belgium translates over. Experiment almost with the tactics, because, this could be a game where maybe you throw in a bit of a different look in the midfield. Maybe you throw Chouanier a little deeper, as we've seen. You throw in a different number 10. Nico Seeger feels like a must. Like, he's been in great form for how you split. This kind of feels like the time. I think Jesse Marsch will really have to look at the attack, because when all is fine, like all is clicking, the defense is fine. Heck, even in this game, I'm not looking at the defense as a reason why they lost. The defense will stay the same. They'll defend in that 4-2-2-2, but mess with the attack a little bit. See if there's some more juice to be had.
Look, I want to leave the program. Sorry, go ahead, Ali. Go ahead.
Just to add to that very quickly, like, I'm not saying Kyle Larin should never play for Canada again, or he's done, or he shouldn't be part of that competition and that mix. But like, you look over his last 20 or so games, and there's just not been enough goals. It's just unavoidable at this point. It's fact. And when you've got 2 new strikers who have come into the group, you've got Oluwaseyi playing well in MLS and knocking on the door. You've got guys who aren't even in the squad who are in decent form. You've got to start taking a look at that now. I think it's time.
Okay, I would not dare to try and give a full, well-rounded out thought on the Americans losing to Panama, but I think it's only fitting that Panama gets a little bit of love in the waning seconds of this program with the goal. Waterman goes to his idol. He signs the kit for him post-game, and just the absolute shock from the Americans and the euphoria in the stadium, because let's be honest, there are a lot of people, regardless of your country, rooting against the U.S. I first saw this and I was like, what did Henry say against the Panamanians? Like, he went right up. I thought he was wagging his finger in his nose. It ends up being one of the coolest stories in recent memory. Alex, what are you going to take away from this quickly? The scenes from Panama. Just a quick thought from you.
Just don't count out Panama. Like, I think a lot of as well, which is funny in the lead up, so many people are just kind of like, US is making the final. Is it going to be Canada versus Mexico? It's just this foregone conclusion the US was going to run over Panama. Panama keeps getting it done. They got a bunch of dogs on that team, frankly. Like, they went out and just, wanted it more than the US. And sometimes it can be a bit simplistic to analyze a game like that, but it genuinely felt like the case. Like the US had the better players, they had more of the ball, they controlled more of the game, yet Panama in the key moments defended like they wanted it more and then scored the goal that mattered.
Are they in with a chance on Sunday?
Yeah, they are, and I can't believe what the US did this week, talking about winning the World Cup and being the number one team in the world. It's like, focus on Panama, guys.
Sometimes it's nice to be humbled when you don't realize you need it, and I think the Americans got a taste of that. Okay, we got to run, but you know where to be on Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. One Soccer or TSN. We're very excited, to be teaming up with them once again. We'll have the matches for you, and then we'll talk about it some more on Monday on One Soccer.